Last time I was talking to you about this experiment or this watercolor pencils painting, and today I want to show you something completely different. And the reason why I love watercolor pencils technique is because it offers endless possibilities, endless inspirations and endless stories. In other words, you can experiment, you can try different pencils, you can try different colors, you can see how they blend together, and you can create amazing inspirational artworks. So in this episode, I'm going to be talking to you about this watercolor pencils painting. I call it the Blue Rose. And I'm going to step you through how I came up with this concept. And I'm going to give you one crucial tip, which I think you should consider if you plan to undertake a similar experiment. Towards the end, I'll talk to you about what could potentially happen, where things could go wrong, or in other words, what happens when you fail a concept. So this was quite a spontaneous project. I basically look at my pencil case, and there are 24 different colors. That includes black, white, and gray, which may be technically not colors. But there are 24 different pencils, and I looked at it and I thought which color is the most represented in this whole pencil case, and it turned out to be blue. Now that basically is 6 different pencils that are kind of bluish or very close to the blue color. I've got a purple, which is a bit of an outlier because that's more towards the red. I also have the sea green, which is also an outlier, which is more towards the green. So 6 different pencils. Then I thought, okay, why don't I make a watercolor pencils painting with these 6 pencils, with these 6 colors? Before we go into the details of this experiment, I'd like to tell you a bit of a side story, my own experience from teaching. So as an art teacher, very often what would happen is that if we're doing a project, a subject, let's say like a rose, and you would tell your students, please prepare some color pencils, we're going to color this rose. What would very often happen is like a lot of students would already have a fixed image which colors they should use. And the rose would be very often associated with red color. So they would only prepare the red pencils and put away all the other pencils in the pencil case. But that in itself is quite limiting. And as a result, the result itself will be quite limiting. So it's quite important to break this barrier and to be prepared to actually use colors that we have not associated with the drawn subject. So going back to my experiment, when I was slowly layering the washes, one after the other, I started to realize that this is not the way to go. If I had to use a cooking metaphor, I was slowly cooking a dish, and I realized that I need to add something extra. I need to add a secret ingredient. In other words, I need to spice it up a little bit to make it more interesting. So when I was at this stage, I looked back at my pencil case and thought, okay, how can I make this a little bit more interesting? And I decided to add a dark green. Since I already had a sea green in the mix, I thought maybe a dark green could be another interesting color in the mix. And I didn't stop there. I look at the other side. I look at the purple, which is closely associated with red. And I also choose to use a bright pink and deep red. Basically, I added 3 other pencils into the mix. Okay, by adding 3 other pencils, I used 9 pencils, 9 different colors in total to finish this artwork. To spice it up, I used the green and the reds to add the blues. But these colors are relatively close to each other on the color wheel. If I had more courage, and if I really wanted to spice it up, I could have used complementary color, which would be an orange or orange yellow, to make it look even more interesting. Which leads me to the point of failing, because it perhaps needs a bit of a courage to kind of step out of the concept, to do something different, to use a different color that so-called doesn't belong in the whole mix. And I think it's quite important that if you plan to do this experiment, and maybe you're not planning to do it with blues, maybe you're planning to do it with reds, it's quite important to have the courage to throw a different colors into the mix to really spice it up, to make it interesting. Now, obviously, that can mean that it's gonna be a complete disaster, but it's better getting it wrong than playing it safe. And the whole point about experimentation is that you try different things. You try to experiment to see how different colors react to each other. And the only way to do that is to actually go for it. Okay, before I summarize the whole concept, if you would like to learn this technique but you don't know where to start, my colleagues and I put together a free masterclass where I teach you step by step how you can use this amazing technique. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. Okay, so in summary, how you can do something similar, how you can do similar experiment at home. You look at your pencil case and find out which color is the most common. In my case, it was blue. For example, in your case, it could be red. And then the step number 2 is to add 2 to 3 different colors, different pencils into the mix. So again, mine was blue, but if it was red, then it would be good to venture out into your greens, into your blues, into your yellows, into your oranges, to basically spice it up, to add something interesting into the mix from the very beginning. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully see you next time. Bye for now.